Sonic Forces, a name that incites fiery debate amongst the most diehard of Sonic fans even 5 years after its initial release in November of 2017. I know it's cliche for me to marvel at how much time has passed between then and now, or then and some time long before then in my videos, but seriously, Sonic Forces was the last mainline Sonic game and it was 5 years ago, the longest gap we've ever seen in the franchise's history. Naturally, that makes the discussion of Sonic Forces more interesting since it was indeed a very divisive title. This one has been a long time coming for me. First, it's because of the fact that my Sonic the Hedgehog game retrospective has been going on since May of 2020 when I reviewed Sonic 1, 2, CD, and 3K in one video. But even then, it goes back way further. In June of 2018, I uploaded the video discussing Sonic stories where I outright said that I was trying to lay the groundwork for the eventual Sonic retrospective. Now, 4.5 years later, we finally reached the game that inspired the whole thing, Sonic Forces. This isn't my last Sonic video, I mean the next game's about to be released, but this is an ending in a sense because everything I've been trying to say has been leading back to this. To establish the necessary context, we need to travel back in time like I tend to in these Sonic videos and talk about what led to this game. Since many of you have probably seen the last couple videos, I'll stick to the bullet points. In the 2000s, Sega had tanked the credibility of Sonic with rushed games and half-hearted or poorly implemented ideas that sought to chase trends with reckless abandon. In 2010-2011, Sega brought a lot of credibility back to the name Sonic the Hedgehog with Colors and Generations, two unambiguously good games, a sentiment shared by both critics and fans. By 2013, they decided it was best to do a Mario-style game with Sonic Lost World. It was met with mixed reception and didn't sell well, being released on the Wii U, a failed console. In 2014, Sega tried doing a relaunch of the Sonic brand with Sonic Boom, new cartoon show, new games, and all that. This was an even bigger disaster as the games were abysmal and the show didn't survive past its second season, leading to massive layoffs from Sega as the Boom brand they put a lot of money into failed in pretty much every conceivable way, once again torpedoing the reputation of Sonic, leaving fans in limbo over what direction the franchise would go in next. But in 2017, we finally got our next two games. First, Sonic Mania, which I discussed last week. This game is one of the most critically acclaimed Sonic titles to ever release, being a near perfect throwback to the Sonic games of the 90s. But then you have the game Sonic Team was working on this whole time. The Boom brand and Mania weren't made by Sonic Team. During the Boom era, a lot of fans were just tuned out, holding out hope that whatever Sonic Team was working on for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One would be the next big game that would remind us all of what made this series so great to begin with. For myself, at least, I was thinking this as far back as 2012. Sonic Generations is one of the most fun games I've ever played, and when we didn't get a new Sonic Team game in 2012, I thought, okay, I'm sure when we get it, it'll be great. With Sonic Lost World, I may have hated it, but hey, it's just an experimental Wii U game. I'm sure Sonic Team is cooking up a great follow-up to Generations on PS4. We were then hit by 3 years of Sonic Boom. The light at the end of the tunnel was the reveal of Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces. Forces was released 1 year after its announcement, meaning that this was a Sonic Team game that was in development for at least 4 years. This game had to be good for a lot of fans to be able to keep calling themselves that. I remember when the reveal trailer for this game was shown to us back in 2016, back when the game was known as Project Sonic 2017. They pulled out all the stops with this trailer. First, with the line, "From the people who brought you Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations." They were saying so much with those 11 words. Yes, Boom was over. Yes, Lost World was over, even. We were going back to the quality standard people wanted after those two titles. A city's in ruins, Eggman's armies taking over the world, and it's up to Sonic to stop them with the familiar boost gameplay that those previously mentioned games had. But then, at this moment, I got really hyped. Was this when multiple characters were going to return? Who was it we were about to see save Sonic? Could it be Knuckles, or maybe Shadow, or Silver? A desire to see Sonic's extended cast of characters was something I had not felt in a really long time. As I've made clear, as a kid watching YouTube in the early 2010s, I just decided to make the opinions of YouTube personalities a substitute for my own. So I was convinced story was something the series was doing wrong in the 2000s and that all those characters weren't really needed anyway. And yet, I had the desire to see them again here. But what did happen was that classic Sonic from Generations and Mania stepped in to save the day, as this game was seemingly another adventure between the two. This was the first warning sign that something was wrong with Sonic Forces. Reason being that classic Sonic was clearly the main attraction for Sonic Generations, but bringing him back alongside this marketing banner kinda showed that they were a little more desperate to evoke Generations than confidently going in a new direction. But hey, this trailer didn't have any gameplay, so for all we knew, it could still be fun since Generations was fun. No, it was the gameplay reveal for Modern Sonic in spring 2017 that had me convinced this game was done for. We saw the stage Sunset Heights, where Modern Sonic boosts forward for 42 seconds before the screen abruptly fades to black halfway through. I saw so many problems with this, from the utterly linear level design to the weaker animations compared to Generations and how limp it looked to play. I pretty much counted the game out at this point, and continued doing so once we saw more mediocre gameplay from classic Sonic at E3. And so, I was not involved at all in the war zone that was this game's pre-release, fans taking different sides and waging social media wars day in and day out. Was the game going to be good? Yes or no? Was classic Sonic a forced inclusion? Yes or no? Was this modern Sonic footage merely a brief sneak peek of the first level or a warning sign of the game itself? Was their new gimmick a fully customizable character just there to placate the original fan character Do Not Steal crowd, or an interesting new mechanic? Who the hell knew one way or another? I just knew that the first gameplay left me feeling like this game was in serious trouble. But the game finally arrived on November 7th, 2017, and I picked it up for PlayStation 4, and yeah, can't say I was a fan. The severity of my reaction to this game can wait till the end of the video though, because now is the time to just dive in and talk about it. Sonic Forces just fails at so many things I want to see in a modern AAA game. To start with the most glaring thing I don't like with Forces, it would be the animation. This was one of the most important aspects of Sonic as a character ever since his debut in 1991. He popularized idle animations, where the character will do an animation when the player stops pressing buttons. Sonic displayed his personality to the audience by tapping his foot and looking at his non-existent watch, just waiting for you to finally keep playing. Something as simple as idle animations was something Sonic would continue to do in each and every game. It just became an industry standard. Forces has modern Sonic lifelessly standing there, not even blinking. It just looks so unfinished, which describes Forces to a T. Compare Sonic Forces animations like falling and rail switching to Sonic Unleashed from 9 years earlier, and you'll see what I mean. In Unleashed, the game many people consider the visual apex of Sonic to this day, rail switching looks smooth and has 60 unique frames of animation. The exact same thing in Forces looks stiff with roughly the same amount of frames, but the animation just lags in the same frame for a few seconds. Falling in Unleashed saw Sonic's quills go up with the wind, and in Forces, Sonic is borderline T-posing through the sky. In Unleashed and Generations, you can actually see Sonic jump into a ball and see him spinning inside of the effect. Here, Sonic just becomes a blue aura with no animation or anything. Appealing animation is one of the easiest ways for your games to look next-gen, and just by starting Forces you can already feel like it's a massive step down from the PS3 games. To its credit, Forces does have some things in its favor over the prior era of games. Unleashed was the first time Sonic Team used their custom engine, the Hedgehog engine, for a game. Back on the PS360, they had massive trouble getting the visuals they wanted while maintaining good performance at the speed Sonic was going at. Unleashed, in particular, nosediving in the frame rate department in several levels. Generations was a step down from Unleashed in terms of graphics and detail, but the trade was that the game could run at a solid 30 FPS on the PS3 and Xbox 360. When developing Forces, Sonic Team worked to create a more refined version of the Hedgehog engine that could produce higher quality visuals than it did before, but on PS4 and Xbox One, Forces is able to maintain a solid 60 frames per second throughout its entire runtime. So I can't pretend Forces is a complete step back in terms of presentation, because it's not. The game runs better than its console predecessors, but now you can play Unleashed in 60 FPS on the Xbox Series X, and the same goes for Generations, although that game was always 60 FPS in its PC port. But my point is that this leveled the playing field for them, so you have to rely on the art direction and the animation to compare them, and from that standpoint, Forces is seriously lagging behind Generations and Unleashed, and artistically, I'd say it even falls behind Sonic Colors and the Wii, as Forces relies heavily on reused assets like Green Hill and Chemical Plant, levels from Generations, reusing the Death Egg model from Generations, and then assets from Lost World like the jungle from Silent Forest or the giant worms from Desert Ruins that just appear in the background of the first stage. The light rays coming down in Metropolis or the ruins of City look nice and detailed, but the overall art direction of Forces leaves a lot to be desired, as many new areas just feel bland and drab, or just like they were cobbled together by reusing assets from other Sonic games. But I'm merely using that as a launch pad to describe how undercooked the game feels in many ways that are even more important. In theory, Forces should have been a slam dunk. Classic Sonic was really fun to play in Generations, and modern Sonic was the best he had ever been with the boost gameplay style. Just doing more of that should have been the easy part. But man, I don't know what happened. This is the worst boost Sonic has ever handled. Many of the fundamentals are still here. You run forward, use the homing attack to lock onto nearby enemies, boost with the square button when your gauge has energy in it. The gauge is filled with white wisp capsules like Sonic Colors. You can slide and stomp with the circle button and quick step with the shoulder buttons. You can't drift in this game as the designers entirely automated that element of the boost gameplay, but in terms of controls, it's pretty much the same as Unleashed, Colors, and Generations. But the problem with Forces is how it feels worse to play in every respect. Take Sonic's, and the Avatars for that matter, acceleration as an example. In the 3 games I just mentioned, Sonic would naturally build speed for a few seconds before reaching his top non-boosting speed, something that lined up with the animation. In Forces, Sonic will run forward for 2 seconds, and then with no shift in animation, he'll get an abrupt speed boost that gives you top speed. It sounds so simple, but it feels so wrong to play. Boost Sonic's ground control when not boosting has always been an issue with these games, but this acceleration makes it the weakest it's been since it's very difficult to be precise with any of your movements. Platforming control is stiffer than the prior Boost games as well. The double jump is back from Sonic Colors, but there's so little momentum carried when you jump and when you double jump that platforming, whenever it crops up, feels so awkward to play. But fear not, Forces adds something to Boost gameplay that offsets that. When air boosting, Sonic will catapult away. I mean that instead of going forward like the other games, he'll launch up before falling down. It can be satisfying to do this, but it really breaks the already meek stages. I say fear not because thanks to this, a lot of modern Sonic's 2D platforming can be bypassed entirely. All these issues carry over in the Avatar stages, as he plays pretty much exactly like modern Sonic but without the boost, which means that I enjoy the Avatar levels even less than I do the modern Sonic ones. At least the act of boosting feels normal in this, but as the Avatar you need to make do with the issues I just laid out. In concept, I think a custom Sonic character is a pretty cool idea. I mean, Sega's offices have been flooded for years with kids sending in their designs for new characters. I would know, I was one of them. Check them out. Very original design, I'm sure you can tell. I am confident every Sonic fan my age is familiar with this website, a full Sonic character creator that I and many other fans used frequently. Sonic's art design is just appealing, and so it's natural for the young fans to want to see their own ideas incorporated into the world. If anything, I'm surprised it took them this long to add in a character creator. In terms of your options, you get a couple different species choices. For myself, I've always picked a bear. Normally I'm more of a cat person, but I don't like how its face looks, so I picked a bear. Each species gets a different ability at the start, like how the cat holds onto some of your rings when getting hit, but the fact that the bird has the double jump makes me really wish that was my choice. But I get ahead of myself. The more you play, the more clothes you unlock, and I'll admit, it was fun to mess around with as I ended up covering my guy with a metal face mask, big one-eyed goggles, and gave him an overcoat. Was pretty fond of him by the end. But in the gameplay, the Avatar levels were such a pain to play. I said all the same problems as modern Sonic cropped up, but I almost feel like the Avatar was worse all around. Since I didn't have a double jump, the limp regular jump caused me to miss platforms regularly. But then I noticed that when I let go of the analog stick, the Avatar would keep running for like a second and a half. How am I supposed to be precise with my movements when I feel like I'm not in control of my actions? And then when attacking enemies, it feels really slow. For both modern Sonic and the Avatar, homing attacking enemies lasts an eternity because both have these long rebound animations before you can attack another enemy. The homing attack has always been at its most satisfying when you rapidly chain attacks together, but in Forces and Sonic 06, you have to watch the same rebound animations again and again. They don't even give the characters more than one, and for modern Sonic, it doesn't even look cool in the least bit, compared to any other game with rebound animations. To be fair, at least every enemy dies in one hit in this game, so it's not as bad with the pacing as 06 was. I was merely using it as a point of comparison. Sometimes the homing attack wouldn't work though, like I'd see the reticle appear on an enemy and yet I'd still fall to my doom when mashing the button, and then other times I'd homing attack an enemy with a red ring above his head or a wisp capsule and I just wouldn't hit the thing I was supposed to hit, and I really don't know why. Besides their grapple hook attack, the Avatar's main method of attack is the various Wisp-Ons. These are guns based on some of the wisps that have become mainstays in the series. The burst Wisp-On shooting fire in front of you and it's easy to spread around. It's the default one, pretty much the only one that's consistently useful throughout the game. It absolutely wrecks the second battle with Infinite and the Avatar's phase of the final boss. Others do have their use, like the Lightning Wisp making short work of Arsenal Pyramid and Null Space, and the Drill Wisp-On giving you the ability to tear through enemies. But these are useful on a stage-by-stage basis. If you're in a level like Null Space, the Drill Wisp is pretty much useless, and while the Lightning Wisp without the Light Dash trails is useful in combat, it's not as good as the Burst. So you have to experiment with that yourself. I thought the Cube Wisp was pretty lame though, since it's slow in combat, not that satisfying to use as you turn your enemies into cubes, but I also never used the Asteroid or the Hover Wisp, since the three I spoke favorably of just now sufficed for me. Mechanically, that's all I've got on Forces, since even with these bare-bones mechanics, there's almost no time to ever put them to use, since these are some of my least favorite stages in the history of 3D Sonic. The issue is that each and every one of them is too short to be enjoyed. By the standards of Forces, 90 seconds is a long modern Sonic stage. Generations already had shorter levels than Unleashed, but I thought that Generations made up for it by packing its 9 modern Sonic levels with different paths that changed how you played the stage, making them really fun to replay compared to Unleashed's longer, more reaction time-based levels. Forces doesn't really do either one. In its 3D stages, you might have a diverging pathway where on both, the game just plays itself for several seconds, but when you aren't doing that, it's just mindlessly boosting forward. The most shameless example will be the infamous Luminous Forest. Let's take a look.
Eggman's forces are scattering bombs like confetti!
We can't go on like this!
The whole place is going up in flames! Not the kind of fireworks I like!
that opening was almost 20 seconds of doing absolutely nothing besides holding the boost button. Fun fact, I wasn't even moving the analog stick there, I was just holding the boost button while the enemies were literally running from me as I bulldozed through them. I then air boost over the 2D platforming and then boost your way through the entire rest of the stage that is almost all automated, which only lasts like a minute and 20 seconds before you reach an unskippable QTE where Sonic gets eaten by a snake and you have to escape by mashing buttons, and then that's the stage. You could take any modern Sonic level in this game and use it as a case study. Sunset Heights, a level so bare bones that in the pre-release people thought it was the tutorial, as it offered genuinely nothing besides boosting forward, mixed in with some mild automation and homing attack chains that also ends in about 50 seconds if you know what you're doing. Mordor Canyon is one road down that could be fun if you actually had to engage with any of it, but instead you're just air boost over the whole stage and it's over in like 40 seconds. And this is the last modern Sonic level, really ramping the difficulty up right in time for the ending. This level is bizarre in multiple ways though, like this part where the road splits into 3. But the easiest path that is right there in front of you is a dash pad that takes you over the entire section with the red ring, while the other two have enemies that pop in on screen with each one, like they weren't even expecting you to go this way. But since when were the content skips in Sonic games the easy path? It's just so weird. But again, this is a game-wide issue. Arsenal Pyramid has 2 segments, but the opening one doesn't let you start controlling it until 4 seconds in, and you surrender control to automation 14 seconds in. This whole part of the stage is 36 seconds long, and you only play for 10 of them, and then you lightning wisp your way to the goal ring. There's no other way for me to say this. I think Modern Sonic and the Avatars levels are just awful from top to bottom. When I think back to any stage from Unleashed, I just remember how fun it is to dodge obstacles going at top speed with only a couple seconds to react to it all. In Sonic Colors, there was a lot of reward in using the wisps to explore different bits of level design you didn't see otherwise and getting rewarded with boost segments when doing it. Then Generations married the two philosophies of Unleashed and Colors, providing fun reaction time-based gameplay with tons of exploration. Combine that with great controls and bam, that's the best 3D Sonic game right there. Forces just doesn't do any of that and handles like a prison toilet to boot. So I cannot enjoy playing this game because its handling and levels are not good. But of course, Modern Sonic and the Avatar are only 2/3 of the game. The other part is Classic Sonic, who is worse than the 3D characters. It's already baffling how Modern Sonic's gameplay fell so far between Generations and Forces, but then Classic Sonic is even more mystifying. Let's see here. On the PC version anyway, you can't control Classic Sonic with the D-pad, so I had to use the analog stick to control a character in 2D. The momentum that defined Classic Sonic in the 90s is entirely absent from his playstyle, and he, like the Avatar, has this jump that sees me going into the abyss more than I'd like to admit. Once more, this is a small list of issues, but they're pretty damning. I mean, look at this well-known ramp in Classic Sonic's chemical plant. You gain no speed while running and then can barely grab the rings here. Generations was not a perfect replication of the Classic Sonic gameplay, but it was satisfying in its own right, especially with the instant spin dash, something that's also not in Forces. Classic Sonic doesn't get that many stages in Forces, but every time I run into one of them, I just let out a sigh because he plays terribly. Stages have different routes, that's nice and all, but everything that made Sonic fun to play in 2D is just not in this game. This is genuinely right up there with Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 for some of the worst 2D Sonic action I've ever played. The only redeeming factor is that the drop dash from Sonic Mania made its way into Classic Sonic's gameplay in Forces. That is what makes it more fun than the literal bottom of the barrel, since it can be fun to drop dash over segments of stages, but beyond that, the designs of the stages are awkward and clunky to get through because Classic Sonic feels so stiff to play as here. Speaking of Mania, this is the most shocking part of it all. This was released just 3 months after Mania, which had full stop a perfect recreation of the classic mechanics in them. So now, how could you not compare Forces to Mania when Classic Sonic is the exact opposite end of the Classic Sonic gameplay replication scale? It was just such a poor showing. In a more general sense, the playable roster of Forces has always been such a weird one. Modern Sonic, Classic Sonic, and your custom character. Sonic has a pretty large cast of characters, and I feel like the games that have had multiple playable characters or just multiple playstyles have always tried to do something interesting with them. The main trio from Sonic 3K each being one of the primary colors that excelled in different areas from one another. This much I talked about in the Mania video last week. But then looking ahead, it was pretty interesting how the cast of Sonic Adventure is made up of 6 characters that were all unique in their own ways, each telling their perspective of the same story. SA2 featured 2 teams of 3 where each one directly contrasted with someone on the opposing team. Sonic Heroes divided its cast into 4 teams of 3, with each member being a speed type, flight type, or power type. Sonic 06 had 3 main hedgehogs in its time-traveling story, Sonic representing the present, Shadow the past, and Silver the future. Unleashed had a day and night split for Sonic in his Werehog form, Generations having classic and modern Sonic. Even the Shadow game had things thematically divided by neutral, dark, and hero. In Forces, it's Sonic, another Sonic, and you. I don't know, it just feels pretty messy. You might now be thinking, oh man, the thematic harmony of the playable roster, that's what we're talking about right now, and yeah, I get it, nobody cares but me. Spare me the comments about it, but I just can't help but feel that way considering how haphazardly the game plays. In the interest of fairness, I decided to look and see what mods I could download to hopefully improve the experience. I was playing on PC after all, so why not take advantage of that fact and see what the hard-working Sonic fan developers have come up with. Mods enhance games I already like and make them even better, so why not give Forces that chance? The mods are pretty much what you'd expect, reducing the lag between homing attacks for modern Sonic and the Avatar, making them faster to play, making classic Sonic less stiff to play, that sort of stuff. But with the game we got, I honestly don't think mods and cheats can save it. I know people ignorantly make that claim about Project Sonic 06 all the time, so I'll back up my claims a bit more here. With a game like 06, the levels were fine, had alternate routes and speedrunning opportunities. The issue with the game, beyond its buggy and unfinished nature, was the fact that every single character was almost sub-functional. If you fix the problems with the game, the technical aspects, the handling, some of the awkward gimmicks, and then add some meat onto the bones of the scoring system in relation to the game's combat, and bam, you've taken one of the worst Sonic games and made it one of the most fun, while still clearly being the same gameplay and levels. With something like Rise of Lyric, which I covered a few weeks back, you'd have to start from scratch and make a new game to ever come close to the original vision of that title. The gameplay and the story of the final product were just too far gone. In the case of Forces, it's merely that I think fixing the game is a twofold effort. For one, you'd have to fix the handling, and while mods can make little fixes like the ones I just mentioned, nothing has ever made modern Sonic not really stiff to play. So you'd have to do it over from scratch, or just add the Forces levels to Generations as a mod to that game since it already handled so well. But then, you wonder what the point is because the levels of Forces are no good, so it almost doesn't matter. The most promising Forces mod is the Reimagined Stages pack, which has 6 stages fully completed. This mod extends the levels we've got in the base game into something much more substantive. Sunset Heights, for example, has an entire grind rail and quick-step chase following where the stage originally ended. The midpoint of the stage triggering this cool cutscene instead of Sonic and Shadow just standing there like in the base game. For Arsenal Pyramid, I was completely surprised by how enjoyable the stage is now that the opening is a real level with platforming and all that. The double boost segment even requires you to maintain your gauge for risk of dying. Basic mechanics that completely transform a nothing segment into something worthwhile. There's also this cool classic Sonic stage mod that adds intros to his levels like the other characters get, and even adds a chaos boss fight, which the base game didn't have. But my point is, to make me enjoy Forces, you need to throw out how it plays and make new stages, and by that point you've made a completely different game. I will continue looking forward to the Reimagined Stages mod since I'd never disrespect the hustle. I'm just saying I think Forces is beyond the brink. This game is so full of half-cooked ideas. I mean, just look at the story. Despite all the trailers trying to hype this up, which yes, did happen, the final product is the same as Colors Through Lost World. Actually, it's worse than all of them. What I mean is that we're still dealing with about 25 minutes of cutscenes, and yet the story makes absolutely no sense as it seems a lot of decisions about the game were made before there even was a story written at all. But before I even get into it, I gotta talk about how the cutscenes are a downgrade from the previous games. Lost World I thought was a step up in presentation, and then Rise of Lyric's only real positive was its cutscene animation. But in Forces, it's the worst of all worlds. The cutscenes are rough to look at because every scene that does not include your custom character is pre-rendered, so they each look really compressed, which sucks because the Avatar scenes show they'd look just fine if they were in engine. But they opted for pre-rendered cutscenes again like Colors and Lost World. And much like the stages, the cutscenes also don't get enough time to feel important. Some scenes run for like 30 seconds. No better example than this entirely unedited bit.
Have we met before? Sonic!
Tails!
I was so worried. I thought you were...
You worry too much. Look, I'm perfectly fine. It's been generations since I seen you. You okay?
Good news is you're safe. The bad news is Eggman said he had some plan that will destroy us all in 3 days.
3 days, huh? Well, a lot can happen in that time.
Seriously, that cut was so abrupt, and so was the ending where it feels like the scene just started but we're already farted back to the stage select screen with these talking heads. The presentation of the scenes just leaves so much to be desired compared to what other games were putting out at the time. It's 2017, we're on PS4, let's up the ante a little bit, you know? The right animation really does go a long way. I once saw an edit on YouTube of this scene where Sonic sees Infinite for the second time. In-game looks completely flat as Sonic paces back and forth.
Oh, great! See, Infinite? Now we're getting to know each other. So, what's your favorite color? Do you like long, romantic walks on the beach? What's the source of your power? You can skip the first 2 questions if you like.
But in the edit, it was like this.
Oh, great! See, Infinite? Now we're getting to know each other. So, what's your favorite color? Do you like long, romantic walks on the beach? What's the source of your power? You can skip the first 2 questions if you like.
Just that extra bit of character would salvage scenes with the exact same dialogue. As for the plot itself, we begin with Eggman monologuing to nobody in particular about how much he hates Sonic and how with his new invention he's for real in this game. Because older games definitely had to say that out loud. Cut to Eggman attacking the city, and Sonic tries to stop him before he's face to face with the new bad guy, Infinite, and his squad of goons. I don't know how to describe it, I've just always found this scene really funny. Ever since the cutscenes got leaked before launch and RZ showed me this scene, I was just busting out laughing at Sonic getting his ass beat.
Shadow! It's you? Zavok! Metal! Chaos! Here we go!
I'm trying, Sonic, but these readings are all messed up. They don't make any sense.
Time here, Tails!
With Sonic defeated, well, the game just tells us that Eggman took over the entire world, and now it's up to Sonic's other friends in the Resistance to fight back. Unsuccessfully, I might add. Until they recruit a kid, your custom character who barely survived one of Infinite's attacks, and is now the leading field person of the Resistance as they find Sonic and start to push back on the Eggman Empire. I feel like Sonic and the custom character teaming up and building up your character's confidence is a pretty fine idea for a story, but then there are so many ways in which this game is just lame. Like how Classic Sonic is in it. At the end of Mania, Classic Sonic was warped here by the Phantom Ruby, and we see what comes of that in this game. But it's so clear how forced he is into the plot because he contributes almost nothing and has literally nothing to do with the custom hero character or Infinite. Instead, it just takes down Chaos Zero in a cutscene because that apparently didn't need to be a boss fight. There are so many things here I could point to that I find questionable. The concept art showed they wanted to bring back old levels but do them in a dark and twisted way to show how Eggman took over the world, but then in the game they just added sand to Green Hill. And while I'm at it, the first stage takes place before the war even starts, and yet the entire area is war-torn with destroyed robots and is covered in sand. But 6 months later, Tails is shocked at the state of sandy Green Hill. The game also got a DLC campaign called Episode Shadow that was going to take place before the events of the game. This turned out to be completely empty as well. 3 stages where all of them are just reusing stuff from the main campaign, even if it doesn't make sense. It's all before the war, and yet you play levels in the middle of a battlefield? Episode Shadow stages could be beat in a combined 4 minutes tops. One of them being a water slide level, and another being entirely 2D with nothing but Mario Maker blocks surrounding you. It just feels half-baked, I don't know how else to put it. It was nice that Shadow was playable again, but his stages felt like a complete afterthought. But not as much as the storyline he got here. Episode Shadow was billed as the backstory of Infinite, and in it we learned that Infinite worked for Eggman when he was a normal jackal, but getting beat up by Shadow convinced him he was too weak to show his face and decided to become one with the Phantom Ruby to get the power to do whatever he wanted. But I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense because the main game of Sonic Forces is pretty convinced that Infinite is some kind of robot, entirely inorganic. Just listen.
Impossible. Your abilities exceed your previous data.
Unlike mechs, I can grow. I get more powerful every second.
So this is where Eggman built Infinite. It's so sad. What a lonely place to be brought into the world.
And since nobody ever corrects this, I feel like this must have been some earlier draft or something and nobody noticed it once they rewrote the details. The series of Forces prequel comics also show that Infinite was once normal and how he met the Doctor. This also being where we learned that Eggman didn't create the Phantom Ruby or even have an elaborate excavation of it like he did in Mania, he just found it on his doorstep one day. Lucky, I guess. Episode Shadow raises more questions than it answers. The pre-release hyped up all these returning bad guys, including Shadow, which had fans scratching their heads because Shadow hadn't been a villain in like 15 years at this point. In the game, it turns out that all these are illusions from the Phantom Ruby, but Episode Shadow shows that he himself is an important part of Infinite's backstory, and it never comes up in the campaign that Shadow was one of the illusions that Infinite made when you'd think that would be important. And on the flip side, you'd think Shadow would have more of a reaction to seeing Infinite again at the climax of the story, but it's like they've never met before. Like Episode Shadow was an afterthought. Also, what even happened to Shadow anyway? The Resistance is under the impression for half the game that these are the real deal Shadow, Chaos, Zavok, and Metal Sonic they're fighting, so what was Shadow doing for the 6 months between Episode Shadow and his appearance to announce that the Phantom Ruby makes fakes? You could say he was gaining that knowledge, but the story never says that, nor does it pose the question of why he didn't tell someone this before now. The issues just keep piling up, like how Tails explains that classic Sonic must have been sent to this Earth because the world just needed a Sonic because theirs was dead, but modern Sonic is not dead, he was just in jail, so there goes that theory, but the story never brings it up again. Classic Sonic is also now from another dimension?
You're that Sonic from another dimension, aren't you?
When Generations made it pretty clear that this was a time travel story?
We're traveling through time and space!
Hey, Sonic! Enjoy your future! It's gonna be great!
Tails is suddenly deathly afraid of Chaos Zero when he's fought Chaos 4 in the past. Knuckles is the leader of the Resistance, and then by the third act, he decides on a new plan after, I'm not kidding you, 90 seconds that they should send all their troops to attack Eggman because why not? And it's then confirmed in the stage that 80% of their forces got wiped out and they lost contact with the rest. What is going on here? And while I'm at it, this game has some of the worst line reads in any 2010 Sonic game. Probably the worst acting in a Sonic Team game since Sonic 06, honestly.
Your plan will end like all your plans do, with you sitting in a pile of busted robot parts wondering how you failed so badly!
My point isn't that things that don't make sense or are stupid are exclusive to Sonic Forces, as you could do that with almost any plot if you tried hard enough, especially with Sonic games. The point I'm making is that despite the cutscenes running a mile a minute, it still doesn't make much sense and leaves you scratching your head just like the Sonic plots that went balls to the wall in the 2000s. Sonic Forces clearly feels rushed. What else can a player feel when you have two gameplay styles that worked before on numerous occasions that no longer do, and when the stages are empty and short? Sonic Forces clearly did not get the time it needed to be whatever it was trying to be. The final product we got was this mess of different ideas that have no cohesion whatsoever. Maybe if we got Sonic games frequently, something as aggressively mid as Forces would feel fine. However, in 2017, this just wasn't good enough. Think about it. Prior to Forces and Mania, the last time everyone felt good about Sonic across the board was 2011, Sonic Generations. 6 years had passed since then, and the games were either highly mid or just god-awful. After 3 years of boom, Sonic Team's game had to be stellar, but what we got was just another budget game that dolled itself up with hype-looking promos trying to catch the eyes of as many fans as possible. See, classic fans? Classic Sonic is back. See, adventure fans? Chaos and Shadow are going to be major parts of the story, and Shadow is playable, and you can create your own custom character. This mix of stuff we got just feels like a mess of different crowd pleasers trying to share one roof. The developers of Forces were no doubt impacted by the disaster of Sonic Boom, which, as I went into in those videos, was something Sega could have avoided with significantly smarter decision making, but that's not the timeline we live in. In our world, Sega just made another budget game to compensate, and this is the result. So when you reach the end of Forces, it just feels so lifeless and draining to play. Yeah, sure, I'll boost over Mortar Canyon. Yup, classic Sonic ends on an auto-scroller that automatically kills you at the end if you don't hit the dash pad, how nice. Infinite's final boss is just more of the same as the Metal Sonic fight from earlier in the game, and the last tag team stage between Sonic and the Avatar is just more quick-stepping. Thrilling. The final boss is called the Death Egg Robot for some reason, but in design it's literally the Egg Nega-Wisp from Sonic Colors being reused as the final boss of a Sonic game once more. At least Lost World made it look different. This is just the Colors finale if it went on for 6 minutes, was preceded by chucking trash bags at Eggman and getting instant killed by this crushing fist attack. By the time the game ends, I'm just so glad to see it go, even if I was only playing for like 3 hours at that point. As the characters start babbling about absolute nonsense in the ending like fixing the real world we all live in, we'll be friends forever, and just what are they talking about? I don't know, but in my opinion, the game hasn't earned the right to act like something just happened after the biggest anti-climax in the series.
You gonna keep moving forward? No matter what, yeah? You and I aren't so different. See you later, buddy.
Sonic Forces was the final straw for many fans, and I'll explain why. I've been exploring the context of the Sonic series from my perspective in such depth in these last couple videos because it was all leading up to this moment. I loved every Sonic game as a kid before going on YouTube in 2010 and learning that most of these games were considered bad. But then everyone liked Colors and Generations, so did I, so the franchise was saved. But then, I thought Sonic Lost World was absolute trash when it was released. But that's just one extremely disappointing game, right? Surely the next one will save the day. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric released the next year and was so bad that I was convinced I didn't even like Sonic anymore. Whatever these games are, it's just not for me anymore. So be it. The lengthy Boom drought only further goes to highlight that. I'd play the games I liked, especially once I got into emulators in 2015, even experiencing ones I had never played before, but I was not hyped with the future of the series anymore. Maybe the next game will be good, I don't know, and I don't really care that much. but what was evident was that people wanted something to change. This is what I was talking about in the Sonic Boom 3DS video if you missed that one. There was a rising section of the fanbase that was looking back at panned Sonic games like Unleashed or Black Knight and thinking, man, this actually was kinda cool. Unlike whatever this is. So we get the announcement of Mania and Forces. Seems like the best of all worlds, as Mania is going to give us more top-tier classic Sonic gameplay, and Forces will return to really cool and exciting games like the ones of old, but with that Colors and Generations polish. As I said last week, I learned by playing Mania that I didn't find top-tier classic Sonic gameplay to be intrinsically rewarding, removed from the context those games were released in. And then Forces did not have the fun nor polish of Colors and Generations, and then wasn't exciting or cool either, just more runs of Green Hill, Chemical Plant, and the Death Egg with some other cheap nostalgia bait thrown in when we already had seen so much of this stuff in the last 7 years already. Sonic Forces was not Sonic 06. It was not some unfinished, broken mess. It was mediocre. Aggressively mediocre, which was just not good enough. This was the turning point for me, at least. Forces didn't show me I hated Sonic, it reminded me of why I liked Sonic at all. The striking characters doing cool things, always finding new ways to top themselves with action set pieces. That was it. That was Sonic for me. Good gameplay and replayability are the things I value most in Sonic. That much is obvious since Generations is my favorite official Sonic game. But those other things are important too. And Forces seemed like it was going to bring them back, but it just didn't. This was the moment where it happened. I'm in a Discord call with my friends in 2018 where we're bashing the new games as we tended to do. And I needed some kind of umbrella term to describe these 2010s games. One that fit in all the nostalgia these games had, with the wink and nod humor almost all these games had too. That's when I was like, you know, they call the 2000s the Dark Age. You know what this is? This is the meta era. To thunderous applause from the call. I then said that in a video that happened to get 1.1 million views as of this recording. And the rest is history.
This is the beginning of what I will continue to refer to as the meta era of Sonic. An era that still persists to this day, I might add.
We've now come full circle, since Sonic Forces is now 5 years old, and that video will turn 5 years old in 8 months or so. Do I have regrets? I've had a few. I can't say the meta era was supposed to catch fire and become a thing hotly debated about within the Sonic community. Like I said, I was just tossing out an umbrella term that described every game from Sonic 4 Episode 1 to Sonic Forces. Many claims made about the name are ones I don't agree with, like how it's negative sounding. I mean, all it's saying is that the games went in on the nostalgia and the humor in the 2010s, and that's just a fact. And coming from a series where we accepted Dark Age and Renaissance era back when the 2010s looked good, quality-based names were clearly not out of the question anyway, which I never thought meta era was supposed to be, since I've been saying from the start that Generations is one of my favorite Sonic games of all time. But I'm not here to defend the name because honestly, I don't care anymore. Call it whatever you want, it makes little difference to me. Fighting with Sonic fans over which era has the most merit doesn't interest me at this current moment in time. Eras and all that are useful for describing trends in the series, but little else. I even made the name a joke in some of the videos I did in 2021.
So now we fast forward to 2010, the dawn of the evil meta era, trademark Jay's Reviews 2018.
I stopped caring about this crap a while ago, but none of my videos talked about it until now, so here we are. I haven't even uttered the phrase in over a year, I think, because like I just said, it doesn't matter to me anymore. Call it whatever you want. I'm just trying to give my thoughts on video games in a series I happen to be fond of. Comparing and contrasting the various games in a relatively neutral state is all I want to do now. It's been 5 years since Sonic Forces, and man, I don't even know what else to say. This was a pretty negative review, but mainly because I don't think this was a good game. If you like Sonic Forces, that's fine, keep doing you. I'm just gonna say how I felt, and I felt the game was pretty mediocre. So mediocre that it becomes outright bad in my eyes. Maybe I'm biased, but whatever. It doesn't actually bring me that much joy to say I thought it sucked, but I'm doing a retrospective on Sonic, and here's my take. Speaking of takes, one thing I always see people talk about is some kind of threat is, oh yeah, the kids who grew up with Rise of Lyric, Fire and Ice and Forces will grow up in a few years and make video essays about how great they were. How you gonna feel then? I don't have an opinion on this matter. I have gotten comments from people telling me that Fire and Ice was their first Sonic game, or that Rise of Lyric was that. If anything, I'm most surprised the kids even played Rise of Lyric given how badly it sold. But hey, good for you! Having positive memories of a game I thought was the most soul-devouring game of all time doesn't speak ill of you or me. But my larger point is, in 7 years or whatever, I will hopefully have more important things to worry about than cowering in fear over someone having a different opinion than me on Sonic the Hedgehog, that many people younger than me will resonate with. Good for them. Hope they have a great time. I'm still gonna say I think the game is boring. Like, you're entirely free to dislike games I have uttered positive thoughts about, because I never said Sonic 06 was good. Let me say that one last time to make sure people in the back heard me. But looking ahead, Sonic Frontiers is gonna be released in a few days, the first main series Sonic game in 5 years. I thought it was important to review Forces before Frontiers released because I wanted my thoughts on this game to be what they were, entirely removed from whatever came of Frontiers. With these being the final days before the new game drops, I'd say this was the perfect time to look back. As for Frontiers, I see no better way for the Sonic retrospective to properly end than by playing this new game and giving my thoughts on it. I'm definitely not giving my thoughts on its pre-release content now, as that can definitely wait for next week. Past that, I have one final saga of Sonic videos planned to really close the lid on this series for the time being, but until those videos come out, I'll say what I always do. Hope you're all looking forward to those videos, and in the meantime, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.